26 degrees in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily, your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Maupe Ogunyuso.
And I'm Ayo Makine. Good morning and welcome. It's 29 degrees this morning in Lagos, and today, remember, is May 26. Two countdowns. One is 1 day to go, and the other maybe 3 days to go. Maupe.
You can extend it and make it 3 countdowns to actual Democracy Day. But tomorrow, yes, I'm going to be my father's daughter and be a child once again. And I'm looking forward to that for all of the children of this great country. Well, Ayo, we're keeping it here in the Federal Capital Territory as we take you to the geographical center of Nigeria. Yes, it's situated right here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. That dot you see on the ground there, on that white spot, is known as the geographical center of Nigeria, and it's situated in the Katampe Hills. Yes, around the area called Katampe of Abuja. Right opposite it, on one side of the road, you see just one lone hill, and on top of that hill, this spot is there, marking the center of Nigeria. So Abuja is not just called the center of unity for nothing. It is also the geographical center, or it's also home to the geographical center of Nigeria. So if you look at the whole and the entire map of Nigeria, including the new Eco-Atlantic, the newly reclaimed land, and wherever else it is that you might be in this country, this point is the middle, the geographical middle of our country. Isn't that interesting that we have such a point, Ayo?
It is more than interesting. It's actually very, very significant. And to a large extent, many people have just been hearing the Federal Capital Territory as, being some dot in the center of the Nigerian map. Well, this is proof of that, and that's really the point that we're making by bringing this to you. And I want to believe, Maupe, that this is something that also is being or should be taught in schools. Now, this is one of those places that children should be brought to on a day like tomorrow or on a day like May 29, just so that we recognize that, look, we have something such as this. So this is what we have. This is the center of Nigeria. When was the first time you learned about it watching us from home? When was the first time you knew that, okay, there is such a place as the geographical center of Nigeria? Take it in as you ruminate.
Well, Ayo, you asked a question about how old people were when they found out there was such a thing as a geographical center. I'll tell you that I didn't know about it until I eventually moved to Abuja. And then someone graciously pointed to me. I think we were passing that particular area and said, look over there, that particular hill. On top of it, there is actually a point which is known as the center of Nigeria. And interestingly, there is a radio house situated right there on top of that particular hill. So if you do happen to go there, there'll be more than that point for you to see. Well, Abuja is famous for many things, and part of what it's famous for also is politics, which transcends many parts of the country. And we already know that even though it's only 2025 and general elections are a good 2 years away. I mean, if states were like Anambra were talking politics every day, you will understand why. The elections are only in November. But in Nigeria, the elections are a good 2 years away, yet it would seem that that is the only thing that seems to interest our politicians. So you find already that there's a lot of talk in the political sphere. If you go to Akwa Ibom, you find the governor who is upset that his own political plans have been revealed by himself. I mean, this was not recorded secretly. He was speaking very freely. He saw camera right in front of him and kept on speaking. And then later on got upset that, oh, details of what he said, you know, that were his plans to defect from one party to the other were already made public even before he decided to do that. And, you know, he decided to punish the journalist in question, which, you know, a lot of people are still wondering, how do you do that and say that we're in a democracy? Or is it when you go to Plateau State, for instance, where elections to their party executive for the North Central region have just been concluded. And then you find very interesting remarks made by the governor, you know, thanking those who stepped down in the process, saying to them that, oh, look, you know, those of you who stepped down are true Democrats. And I keep asking myself why it is that political parties, you know, need people to step down. Why is it that we cannot just, you know, do things in a manner that is pleasing and fair to all? So, for instance, you know, while people might understand that, okay, yes, with zoning would mean that not everybody can be nominated at the same time. When it comes to special considerations such as women and young people, yes, you also have things like that. So, for instance, if seats have been zoned to say young people from these ages are the only ones who can vie, or women from certain areas are the only ones who can vie, yes, you can now say, okay, in the interest of fairness, those who step down can be thanked. Or even, you know, zoning to particular areas, because in some instances, excuse me, given how we tend to vote in this climb of ours, we do know that some populations are more than others. And for other people to even get their voices heard, you might need to tell certain people to please, you know, relax and let this position be for these people from this area for now. With the exceptions of that, you know, when it comes to personalities, I would think that it will only be fair that, you know, everyone, as many people who have ambition, be allowed to vie. We haven't heard the last while. It was seen that what we saw on the cameras looked like everybody was content, and, you know, you could hear a speech by the governor, which to me seemed like an attempt to pacify those who participated in the process. I do believe that if there's anything that we can be sure of, it is that complaints will certainly trail the processes that we've just witnessed over the weekend, even as we've just heard a major complaint from the Minister of the FCT, who is pulling out of the peace processes within his party, or the reconciliation processes, and saying that there are clearly attempts, and he's not even just hiding the names, he's naming the governor of your state in this instance as the person who's actually behind the idea to sabotage the peace plans. Well, quite a lot to take in, but I can tell you that even though we're a good 2 years away, we're going to make sure that we do every effort, to make every effort to keep the mandate on accountability, not on the political process. And when the process is falling short of what it is that the people expect, we certainly will also highlight that. But I think that it's important to take a look at what happened in Plateau State over the weekend, so that our viewers, you know, can also take that in and see how parties are preparing towards the 2027 elections. Ayo.
Well, it's a really touchy one. And I'm just hoping that at the end of the day, everyone involved will really understand what the issues are. Last week, we hosted Dr. Sam Adeyemi. And one of the things that he said is that, look, whatever we are doing today, the effect will not be felt until another 30 years from now. I mean, he cited when we were talking about the Delta State students who were writing WAEC, you know, without electricity, with touch, so to speak, with torchlight, as we say, you know. And he was saying that, look, we are already scarring their minds. And he said something again, you know, in a speech yesterday. He was saying, look, how do we know that the people who are fomenting, who are, you know, doing all that we're seeing today, Marquette, how do we know that they were not also scarred some 30, 40 years ago? And that is the result of what we are seeing today. The kind of governance we are seeing today is as a result of some people who have been scarred over time. Now, is that the way to continue? Something fundamental that Dr. Sam Adeyemi kept saying yesterday. Because, you know, in the issues that you hobnobbed around, Mark, where you say that it's as if there's the same thing here and there. It also happened in Jigawa State when, you know, that coalition was trying to come together. And before you know what was happening, our friends and our colleagues on the morning brief this morning highlighted it, that, you know, there was raucous over representation right there at a coalition meeting. So it's really, really dramatic all of the things that we're speaking about. And guess what? It's at the core of it, according to Dr. Sam Adeyemi from that interview of last week. Culture. We have a culture, a monarchical culture, and it will seem like that mindset hasn't really left us. That is why, according to him, it will be easier for some people to say, okay, what's the word now? I yield to this person, I step down for that person. There's this sole candidature, simply because we really haven't migrated from a monarchical mindset or a unitary mindset into a democratic mindset. So to your question, Mark, if we are in a democracy, opinions should vary. The question again, as so many people have asked over time, are we in a democracy? It's back to you, Mark.
Well, the question we'll keep asking, and we'll keep asking the political class, you know, calling them out on the things that we notice. You know, if we say we're practicing a democracy, then this cannot be a part of our democratic systems. Unless, of course, we now have a new system. Because we have been talking about how we should have our own homegrown democracy. I think that it cannot just be, you know, as we go along, then we define what it is. No, I think it's important for us to define what that homegrown democracy means. There must be a standard. So that as we go along, if we see things that we know ought not to be with what we know a democracy should be, or what we have now defined our own homegrown democracy to be, then we can point out those things and say, look, this was not a part of it, you know, and call it out. Anyway, so we'll keep our eyes on the political process and show you what happened in Plateau State.
The former National Vice Chairman.
Members of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) from the North Central Zone, comprising Plateau, Benue, Niger, Kogi, Nasarawa and Kwara States, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, gather in Jos, the Plateau State capital, for the Zonal Elective Congress. Governor Caleb Muftuan commends the members for placing the interests of the party above personal interest.
For those who were persuaded to step down and they agreed, I want to thank you most profoundly. You have shown that you are indeed party men and women, and that the interest and survival of the party is bigger than your own personal ambition. I want you to know that the party will never forget this.
With a secret ballot voting system adopted for the election, accredited delegates take turns to cast their votes for candidates of their choice. After some hours, voting ends and the ballots are sorted. The chairman of the Electoral Committee declared Mohammed Abdurrahman as elected National Vice Chairman, North Central Zone, among other elected officials.
For the office of the Zonal Vice Chairman, Abdurrahman Mohammed scored 526 and is hereby returned as the winner of the election.
The process is described as free and fair by those who witnessed it.
The exercise here today is a very, very successful one. You can see all the people, all the delegates from all the states, including the FCT, very excited. They are happy that the exercises are taking place today.
Former Senate President and Chairman of the PDP Reconciliation Committee, Senator Bukola Saraki, speaks on efforts to reposition the party.
I'm optimistic that you will see PDP will play the role it should play in this democratization. I'm assured.
The elected zonal executive members thereafter take the oath of allegiance. The PDP is optimistic of strengthening its internal structures and democratic tenets within the party, as well as resolve post-election challenges with this election of zonal executive members.
I did say that our promise on this program is to make sure that we keep the spotlight on accountability. And this morning, we're hosting the Deputy Director, beg your pardon, of the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, on the issue of accountability. Everyone knows that SERAP almost on a weekly basis, issues one statement or the other on one issue of accountability that they have noticed. In recent times, they have written to the Central Bank of Nigeria threatening to sue if they do not reveal the details of the allocations meant for local government and publish them, because we do know that sometime last year, the Supreme Court of Nigeria, and it did cause a very huge controversy. People said, oh, it was a new resetting. The Supreme Court judgment that held that local governments be given their allocations directly. Now, it's unclear how that particular judgment has been executed by the executive arm of government. And what SERAP seeks is transparency in this regard. But we're going to ask a little more detail on what had happened prior to now. So joining us right now is the Deputy Director of SERAP, Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare. Mr. Oluwadare, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always been a pleasure. Good morning.
Well, a lot of excitement was in the air when the Supreme Court, issued that judgment. When the Supreme Court made that judgment, a lot of people were excited, thinking that at long last they're going to see monies trickle down to the local government and see perhaps more action at that local government level with more development and more governance, it will seem, getting directly to the people at the local government level. Would we say that we had our hopes raised for nothing?
Thank you, Mokwe. Not necessarily. The Supreme Court, of course, has been applauded, and we do applaud the Supreme Court for that judgment. But the issues that bedevil the execution of that judgment should not be looked at in isolation. It is the same problem of impunity or the lack of accountability that has made that judgment, as it were, more academic in terms of substance, as it were, today. So the Supreme Court has spoken. The least you would expect would be that the parties that should take administrative steps to obey will do so. But unfortunately, because of impunity, which has gone on for too long, that judgment appears to only be laudable on paper as it stands, which is why we have taken that steps, at least to clear the air, and to get one of the major players, the stakeholders, in enforcing that judgment and to provide information to the Nigerian public, which in this case is the Central Bank of Nigeria. Of course, we've had various information from various stakeholders, including members of the Association of Local Government, complaining about not being allowed to either open accounts or the Supreme or the Central Bank not facilitating the payment of those funds. Which is why we wrote to the Central Bank under the Freedom of Information Act to give us clear details. Has there been any funds paid to any of the local government directly? How much is it? And particularly within the context of some of the special considerations we have, circumstances, pardon me, particularly River State, how much has been paid to River State and why? The Central Bank did not respond to that FOI request, which is why we were compelled to go to court. I'm okay, like I usually say, that shouldn't have been another public interest implication. But of course, because of that same impunity that has gone on for so long, we have to go to court to compel the Central Bank to disclose information on the steps the Central Bank is taking to obey the Supreme Court judgment, and the matter is pending in court as we speak.
So, right now, you try to get information and it would seem that that information was not made available. So, it's not a threat to go to court. You are actually in court. Is that correct?
Yes, we have filed the suits. And the background is clear. This is what is a bit painful, because the Central Bank would have to hire lawyers, external counsel, perhaps pay millions of naira to defend this case. To find the background to the case is very important. It's a simple request for information to help government agencies, to help the local government, to help the Central Bank itself, to tell the Nigerian people, this is what we have done, this is what we are doing to obey the judgment of the Supreme Court. The Central Bank has failed, and now time, perhaps 1 or 2 years, money, which the Central Bank will have to pay the National Council, will have to be spent defending the suits. It's so sad, Emma.
Why I find this very strange is because we also had the Attorney General was very involved in this matter. As a matter of fact, it was the Attorney General who took this matter to the Supreme Court. And after judgment was given in favor of what it was that he had requested of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, he went ahead to, we saw, a rush of elections happening at the local government level. A lot of state government conducting local government, well, they will say it was not them, that it was the CX in their state that became active all of a sudden, and local government chairmen emerging. And they had no problem with the judgment of the Supreme Court. Are we saying that since all of the actions that we have seen, we have no evidence that monies are being paid directly to local government accounts or local government chairmen directly? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, and that is what SERAP is saying. And just to be clear that we are not saying what is wrong, we have asked the central bank to clear the air. The central bank is the major stakeholder, you would understand, in enforcing the judgment of the record. The central bank need not be a party anyway to obey that judgment, which is why we're waiting to the CBN to give us clear details. How much has been paid directly to any of the local governments? If not, the central bank should be able to tell us. And tell us also the payments that they made to River State. So as it stands, based on information or lack of it, depending on how you look at it, it would appear that judgment of the Supreme Court is yet to be obeyed. And I want to believe, until the contrary is proved, that none of the 774 local government chairman councils getting money directly from the CBN. Of course, unless the CBN comes out to say the contrary, perhaps during the lifetime of this suit, which we've seen before in some of our public interest advocacy, perhaps the Supreme Court will disclose that during the pendency of this suit and prove us wrong.
Why I find it particularly strange is because the Attorney General was directly involved, and you would think that he'll do his best to make sure that judgment of the Supreme Court is executed. I've heard him speak at different fora, and I think the last I heard was him warning local government chairmen to remind them that they did not have immunity. That yes, in the case of state governors, they had to wait until the end of their tenures before they could be sued on any issue of accountability. But reminding local government chairmen that they did not have immunity, and that if any malfeasance was noticed, that they could be, taken straight away by the EFCC to court, to account for how it is that they have spent monies that they have received. So to hear that, right now it's unclear as to whether local government chairmen or local government areas have been receiving their monies directly, it's a little disturbing. I don't know, would you say that there is just a bit of uncertainty? What about the Attorney General? Have we been able to speak with him to find out, what he knows about this judgment of the Supreme Court, which ought to be executed?
No, wouldn't know the role the Attorney General has played in enforcing this judgment. But again, this speaks to the issues of lack of accountability and impunity that has gone on for so long. Do we need the Attorney General to take specific steps to compel state governments who were parties to that suit to obey the judgment of court? Does the AG as court need to do anything, the Attorney General of the Federation, to compel statutory bodies like the CBN to take steps to obey the judgment of court? Of course, he need not do anything. But this is unfortunately where we found ourselves, which is why we've had to rely on this kind of advocacy that the organization has provided to make public institutions function the way they ought to. And it's sad in this instance because the Supreme Court is the last stop, as you can call it. So it's going nowhere after the Supreme Court, unless, of course, you want to take it to the divine. So, if the Supreme Court has spoken, and there is no clarity yet as to whether the local government councils are getting their funds from the central bank, it's just a very good example of how we have gone in terms of accountability and how impunity actually really supreme. So, the victims of these malfeasance are the Nigerian people. And to forget, there was context to that suit itself. There was a social, factual, and economic context to the truth, which has gone on over the years, which has seen the local governments not being autonomous, are not able to provide the benefits of governance to the people in the local governments. So it means that ultimately, if these Nigerians, you and I and the rest of us, that this suffering, this impunity that has taken place for so long, and it's very hard to blame one party, as it were. Should we blame the governors? Should we blame the CBN? Should we even blame the AGF for doing nothing? Why we do not need to trade those blames? Each of these parties that are stakeholders, whether they are parties to the suit or not, each of these stakeholders are complicit in not doing enough, doing nothing to ensure that this judgment is obeyed and ultimately making sure that Nigerians get the benefit of government. The AGF has been seen at forums, reminding local government chairmen that they, of course, they have to be accounting for those funds from their way. The first thing would be to ensure, to use that same strength to ensure that those funds get to the local government chairman. And perhaps we'll now need to have that conversation about holding the heads of those councils, the democratically elected chairmen, to account for the monies they've gotten. But now, when we do not even know whether it gets to them directly, that conversation is not right. Ultimately, the people were suffering.
I want to ask if the Ministry of Finance is joined in this. And that's because I know that, in previous administrations, the publishing of, FAC allocations was done by the Ministry of Finance. Do you think that should also be directed there?
Allocations go on. That's through the office of the Accountant General of the Federation. If you go to the website of the Accountant General of the Federation, you will see details of FAC payments that happened. I think the one we had is either for March or April. I think the one for March is on the website, and you will see. So FAC allocations are still going on. And the office of the Accountant General of the Ministry of Finance is performing that statutory duty. But what we do not know is that, are we still under the old regime of the amount that should go to local government? Is this still going through the state of what is called under Section 162 of the Constitution, the joint local government and state accounts? Or is it going to the local governments directly? What the Accountant General merely publishes the amount that has gone to each of the arms of government, tiers of government, rather, pardon me, not how it has gone to them, which is where the CBN comes to the matter. And it's very also important to highlight that this suit that we filed is the freedom of information request. This is not a suit to enforce the judgment, as it were. Because again, the Supreme Court has ruled there is no other court, as it were. And it's the AGM that should take those steps anyway. But that is why the General and the Accountant General of the Ministry of Finance is not a party, which again means that the CBN can come forth with information. He will do it one way. I'm sure that way the conversation will be a little bit different. Because the CBN responded to our FOI. Instead, that perhaps out of the 704 local governments, XYZ has gotten these direct allocations. This is the amount we got, or XYZ has opened an account with us. These certain people are. It means that we're able to focus on other areas, look at what is still outstanding to make sure that judgment is obeyed on 100%. But since the CBN, it's a major stakeholder, by the way, because the CBN as well holds the pulse. If the CBN is not forthcoming with this information, then it just means we do not. The FAC allocations are being released every month. The Accountant General is doing his part, as it were, but we do not know who gets what, how it is spent. Which means, in summary, we are more or less back to the old regime, where the state governors hold sway in funds.
All right, let me take this to Lagos, because I know that Ayo has always been a great advocate for the local governments, and I know that he certainly would not be pleased, that this request has been made and has not been honored. Ayo, over to you.
You're absolutely right, Malkwe. The question, number one question that I want to ask you, Mr. Luadari, is, in an ideal situation, how should the Supreme Court judgment have been implemented, if you can make that simple for us? Or do you think it's just one of those judgments that is not just as simple as that? Because from what we heard from some ministers previously is that, look, this is not just a cut and dry thing, there's going to be a process to it. Even now we hear that some committee of practice or community of practice is asking for some process, some governance parameters around this whole thing. And it's been almost a year already. What should have been the ideal process for the implementation or enforcement of the Supreme Court judgments?
Thank you very much. And that is why the AG, being the plaintiff as it were in the suit, I believe has thought out all these issues, both legal, the economic, the financial, and the administrative that links all three together. I want to believe that the AG has thought all of these before going to court, because the Supreme Court gives judgment. Of course, there are administrative processes to enforce that judgment. So these perhaps touch on a little issue of law. Does it mean that all the parties that should take steps to obey the judgment must be parties? I do not think so. And does it mean that if they are not parties, they are not bound to obey the Supreme Court? I also do not think so. And so, can be made on both sides to say that there are steps that needs to be taken administratively to obey this judgment. The arguments are neither here nor there. What needs to be demonstrated is the commitment, and perhaps I can call it the political will, of these stakeholders to obey the judgment. Which is why if this was removing a governor that is not in the ruling party, you would, right? First, you at least would have been okay. It doesn't need much in terms of administrative steps to obey it. But perhaps because this touches on, and not directly on some of the players, perhaps maybe one of the reasons why this is yet to be obeyed. So, to both sides of that argument, there has been an argument that been made, and which perhaps is plausible, that to give full effect to the judgment of the Supreme Court, certain sections of the Constitution needs to be amended, particularly Section 162 of the Constitution, which creates the notion of a joint local government and state account. That, I think that issue was considered, as it were, in the Supreme Court, and there was no direct holding or directive on that point. But all these arguments about administrative steps does not stop the obedience of the judgment. And we've also heard in the public domain that the CBN has mandated and instructed local government councils to open a dedicated account in the central bank. We do not know whether that has been done. I do not know whether the AGF has followed up, or whether he was privy or he approved that administrative from CBN.
Perhaps one of the issues
to ensure that that is done.
Perhaps
we
one of the
issues about what needs to be done. Ultimately, the people need to benefit.
Perhaps, one of the challenges here, because we also hear that some governors, as you mentioned, were forbidding some local government chairmen from doing that needful. And we've also heard that even some local government chairmen, I think sometime last year, themselves saying, no, we're not going to, we don't want the local government autonomy, we're with the governor and all of that. So how much of politics do you see at play here? How much of connivance of the local government administrators themselves do you see in this? And who should be calling the governors to account on account of this particular issue?
Thank you very much. I like the way you framed that, and that is why I mentioned the issue of political will. This again is typical of what we've seen in governance in Nigeria, where our practice of democracy favors politics. Nearly 90%. Just leaves a mere 10% for the actualities of governance. It's gone on for so long. And we can use 1999 as an index, even though it has preceded that. And that is why politics, Nigerians are very politically active and politically aware. But when it comes to issues of governance, it more or less takes, it is not given that much importance. And that's why I mentioned that what appears to be missing is the political will, starting from the highest office in the land, the office of the president, to get this judgment to be obeyed. And perhaps you might counter that by no political will. Why would the AG go to court in the first place? Perhaps it might also be a political gambit to rein in governors of the state. I am not saying that is, but it could be, and people have said that also in the public domain, that perhaps political gambit ahead of 2027 to rein in the powers and influence of the governor. Those who have said that appear to be right now, given what we've seen. The same zeal and The same zeal we've seen the Attorney General displaying going to court. Have we seen the same zeal in executing this judgment? I do not think so. If that has been done, we will not be having this conversation. Perhaps the conversation we'll be having is how to hold the local government councils accountable. I do not believe that the intention of a local government chairman or chairperson that is with the governor, as you said, and override the judgment of when all state governors or parties. So it's not about whether local government chairmen want to be with their governors or not, which they have the right to do given their political inclinations. But this is a simple matter of governance. Politics is there, but this is majorly issue to governance. So, but again, to summary, the way we have elected politics over time as again comes back to haunt us. Politics is being played at the expense of governance. Ultimately, the people are the victims. I think it's the best way to put it. Like I said, I see the AGM displaying that zeal to enforce this judgment. And so,
Mr. Oluwadare, sorry to interrupt you there. I just wanted to quickly find out. This matter is in court. You have clarified that it is a freedom of information suit. Initially, you had given the CBN 7 days, and they didn't respond within the 7 days. Is that correct?
Yes, there was no response.
How quickly do you think that this matter will be resolved now that it is in court?
Mark, that question is, we first hope and wish that this can be resolved next week or next month or in 2 months or 6 months, as it were. But unfortunately, our experience as lawyers and doing this legal advocacy for 20 years now have shown that the problem that the judiciary has also reared is ugly head in instances of public interest lawsuits like this. This case, unfortunately, can drag for a year or even more. You would think that a case like this should be determined expeditiously, which is also one of the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act that compels the court to determine cases of freedom of information expeditiously. I do hope this gets determined by December.
I do hope so
the
too.
Does not suggest it.
Well, we do hope that that will change in the favor, not just in the favor of SERAP, because you do this on behalf of all Nigerians. So we have to thank you for the work that you do, Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare. So thank you so much for speaking with us on the program this morning, and we'll certainly keep tabs with you to monitor progress on this particular matter. Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare is Deputy Director at SERAP. Thank you once more.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a break now. We're back shortly to take a look at matters concerning safety, especially with regards to our petrol tankers moving on the highways. Please stay with us.
You would have thought that, the last we heard was the last we heard, but it would seem like unless something is done about it, it's just something that's just continue unabatedly. Between October last year and as recent as 4 weeks ago, tanker explosions, incidences of tanker accidents, seeing to the loss of lives and loss of investments have pervaded the country, a good number of times. And one organization has decided to do something about it. And that's the subject of this conversation with Engineer Dr. John Erine, who is a fellow Nigeria Society of Chemical Engineers, fellow Nigeria Society of Engineers. He's also Vice Chairman, Board of Fellows of the Nigerian Institute of Safety Engineers, and former National President, Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, it would seem like everyone stopped talking about it for a while, right? So why did you decide that, we shouldn't just let it lie low?
Because the problem didn't go away. That we didn't talk about it, or people didn't talk about it, didn't mean that the problem didn't exist or that it ceased to be worrisome. It's a very, very worrisome situation we're faced with. The carnage on our roads, on the highways, is totally unacceptable. We've been roasting and destroying lives and assets and properties across the country. It's just not acceptable.
But do you think we've been able to track what the real issue is, or what can you say is the common thread around that cuts across all cases of tanker explosion or tanker accidents that sort of the loss of lives in Nigeria?
Yeah, professionals and stakeholders in that specific space have an idea of what the issues are. But I also want to say that tomorrow and next, we're going to have a major national workshop at Abuja where all the issues are going to be x-rayed and dissected in great detail, and to come out with, hopefully come out with workable positions and decisions on the way forward to curb and to end the menace of explosions and incidents on our highways involving petroleum products tankers.
I'm not sure that the tanker drivers themselves are going to be in the room to have that discussion. That's why I'm asking that question. Maybe it's some negligence on their part or something, maybe qualification of the people who are supposed to be driving the tankers. What are the common issues that are going to be discussed
Okay, first of all, I'll say that the tanker drivers and all stakeholders are going to be there.
Okay.
I will also say that, broadly speaking, the issues surrounding these incidents may be categorized under human error, tank truck inadequacies, and then, very importantly, the highway infrastructure condition. So those perhaps are the three most important pockets into which we can put all the causative factors.
How about regulation? Because I wonder how unlatched tankers or trucks, for instance, will get out of a depot, so to speak, without the appropriate, would even be allowed to leave the depot in the first place when they are supposed to know that it's not safe for this fellow to be on the road.
Yeah, a regulatory enforcement in particular cuts across all these factors. So regulation, of course, is an all-important and all-embracing situation that affects the industry and that also brings to bear on the incidents we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so you've mentioned that a number of people are going to be in the room for this discussion tomorrow. What are some of the issues that are likely to be raised?
I mean, there's just one issue. We've got how to stop the carnage on our roads, the incidents involving petroleum products tank trucks.
And who are the people that are likely to be in the room, aside from
all stakeholders are going to be there. Stakeholders from the engineering family, stakeholders from the downstream petroleum industry, regulators in the industry, and professional associations, and all that. Yeah.
So, part of the expected outcomes are policy recommendations and regulatory action, as well as the formation of a multi-stakeholder petroleum product safety committee. What's the intention for that?
Sorry, before I answer your question, also the media has to be there, because the media also are a very important component of the team.
Okay.
But coming on to your question, yes, we're hoping that at the end of the workshop, we're going to be able to distill some measures which will be delegated to a stakeholder group that will work with the regulators to ensure that everybody buys into these measures and that they are enforceable, and that they're going to be enforced, and that we're going to have a much safer industry going forward. And we're going to drastically curtail the number of incidents involving petroleum product tank trucks.
Perhaps one of the other issues that can be identified is that there weren't such strong or strong enough to deter people actions, consequences, to deter people from doing or taking actions or performing activities that have led to some of these explosions over time.
Well, I wouldn't want to just exclusively put it that way. Like I said earlier on, there are a number of factors. Take the highways. Our roads are in very bad shape. And unfortunately, petroleum products distribution is now almost exclusively done through tank trucks on our highways. Years ago, we had a network of pipelines that crisscrossed the country, and they were there for distribution of petroleum products through all the inland depots. With that, the number of tank trucks required was a lot less. The number of tank trucks you saw on the highways was far less than what you see today. So, of course, by consequence, the number of incidents was also far less than what we have today. So that is just one of the causative factors. And the fact that the highways are in very bad shape also means that they're going to, naturally, there'll be, consequentially, there'll be far more road accidents involving the tank trucks.
Do you see a return to those days of fuel petroleum products being piped across the country?
From a professional standpoint and as a concerned Nigerian, I yearn for that, and I honestly believe that sooner or later we're going to have to get back there. That's the only way to go forward.
Do you
we
see
can't rely on the highways for completely for distribution of petroleum products. No.
Do you see it happening? How soon do you see that happening?
Sincerely, I can't say because I'm not in government. It depends on the will of government to address that problem, and that is part of what our workshop is going to be all about. To draw the attention of government and policy makers to the crucial importance of ensuring that something is done about reactivation and recommissioning of the network of pipelines for distribution of petroleum products. A country of this size, with a population of over 200 million people, cannot depend on tank trucks for distribution, exclusively for distribution of petroleum products. It's not going to work.
Someone will wonder what exactly happened to those pipelines in the first place.
A couple of things. One of the major issues is security. A lot of them have been punctured willfully, like people carrying out nefarious activities and criminals. In other situations, it's a natural process. Those pipelines were laid approximately 50 years ago, and many of them are old, aged, and they need to be replaced. The depots they service are also in bad shape. They all need to be refurbished. All these things call for a lot of investment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so just to say again that the Nigerian Institution of Safety Engineers is holding a national workshop on petroleum tanker explosions tomorrow?
Tomorrow and Wednesday, Tuesday and Wednesday at Abuja.
Where in Abuja?
At the theater of Nigerian Society of Engineers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the most we can wish you is a good luck with your event, and we just sincerely hope that, I mean, it's like a kind of all hands on deck, just to ensure that we have the kind of Nigeria that we want for ourselves. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Engineer Dr. John Erine is a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers. He is Vice Chairman Board of Fellows of the Nigerian Institution of Safety Engineers, former National President, Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers, and Coordinator, Process Safety Initiative of Nigeria. Again, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. I will look forward to a safer Nigeria for all of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, that's the show this morning. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of your first day of the week. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.
Well, I am looking forward to Children's Day tomorrow, as I want to believe you are as well. Business Morning will be on top of the hour. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.